Welcome to the Flying High Podcast, with inspiring meetings with people that got love for the aviation industry and passion for adventure. This is Sky Talk.
Welcome, Hanna.
Thank you, Michelle.
So Hanna is you're a traveling nurse.
Correct.
You're a world traveler.
Yes.
Yes. This is the third country I'm meeting you in.
Yes.
Yeah. We first met when you were studying for your private license.
Correct.
Helicopters.
Helicopters.
Yes. And then you came and visited me in Hawaii a couple times, flew with me there. Then you came to Sweden last year, and now we're filming in Greece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flew all the way to Greece.
Yeah, Mykonos, just to do this podcast.
Just to do this podcast.
Yeah. So, you're flying helicopters.
I am flying helicopters.
Yeah.
Not currently at the moment.
Yeah.
Because I'm on vacation when I get back. Yeah.
Yeah. What brought you into aviation to start with?
So I'm a bit of an adventure enthusiast, I would say, for myself personally.
Obviously.
So I started travel nursing in 2018 in Southern California. I'm originally from Oregon, and I really wanted to go abroad to be a nurse, and I decided to go to Saudi Arabia for a year and challenge myself, get myself outside my comfort zone. And then when I moved back from Saudi, when COVID had happened and everything, I was like, okay, what's going to be the next, most personal, growth, and to challenge myself and just get myself to do something outside of just my career. Being a nurse, I'm not just a nurse, and I want to add things to my life and push myself. So at first, when I moved back from Saudi, I wanted to do critical care, but COVID had happened, and it wasn't ideal for me to get into critical care at the time. It was just too much to transition into critical care. So,
And critical care, is that on a hospital?
yeah,
or?
it'll be in the hospital. So I'm all hospital based. I'm inpatient. So as a traveler, I pick up different assignments and I pick where I want to work. And I'm licensed in Oregon and California. So I've primarily stayed in Southern California just because I love the weather and I have a really great group of friends in the area. So when I was decided not to become a flight nurse, I was like, oh, what about becoming the pilot? That's literally all it took. And I researched, at the time I was living in Riverside, and I researched near flight schools, and I had found Rogue Aviation, and I had messaged, I believe I emailed, and then James called me up. I was getting off. I think I was waking up in the afternoon after I worked in my shift the night before, and I just remember it being I was so nervous because I was like, oh my gosh, is this an interview to get into just to try to fly this helicopter? And James took an hour and 15 minutes to ask me what have I done with my life, what has brought me to aviation. And I was just I am such a noob. I hope this is an accepting place. And honestly, now 2.5 years later, it was another one and those dang, I'm so glad I jumped in on it and just did it.
Yeah.
Because it's been a wild ride, but it's been super great, and it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. So, how come you picked helicopters and not airplanes?
I just looked at airplanes and I'm like, oh yeah, those are really cool. Saw a helicopter and I was like, that looks really challenging and a bit intimidating, and I would love to just see how I would do. And I went and I did my discovery flight with James. It was an hour long, and I was sitting there, and he put me right onto the controls, and I was like, oh my goodness, how am I ever going to learn how to do this? And I was not afraid for my life or anything, but I was afraid because I was like, man, am I going to be able to in that hour, of course, my mind's going a million miles a minute, and I was like, this is really hard. I don't know if I can do it, but I want to really see if I can do it. And from then I was just like, you can land these things anywhere. you can see so much more, and you're just really in the air, and I felt so present there, even though I was like stressed about all the controls and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, helicopters are just so versatile, and I was just like, yeah, I'm versatile, so we're kind of similar.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And you flew. What type of helicopter was it? On the discovery flight?
My discovery flight was an R-22. So that was like, at first when I got in, of course, I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is kind of small. Like, how, like, it's so tiny. And now, like, as I get in, I flew before I came on this trip, and I got in, and I was like, it's now just like so comfortable. I will never compare when people are like, oh yeah, you just hop back in. It's like riding a bike. I'm like, there is no comparison to flying a helicopter to riding a bike. Like, no, it's just something that you work really hard for, and it's just muscle memory, like at that point.
Yeah.
So, and now the 22 is like one of my favorites to just fly around in.
Yeah. And yeah, an R-22 is like a 2-seater helicopter.
Correct.
Tiny one, and used mostly for flight training all over the world.
Yeah.
But it's made in at the Robinson factory in California.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the most common one to train on worldwide.
I think if you can fly that, you can probably fly anything. Yeah. And not that I have like loads of experience in flying other things, but I'm just like, you look at this and it's bare bones, which I think is fair, because if you can start from the bottom of like learning something as difficult as that to moving up, I think you just have such a good foundation that you'll set yourself up. Yeah.
Maybe you can just talk us through, like, what's the process? Like, what are the different licenses? How does it work?
Sure. So for Rogue, I think I was just really lucky, like, finding them right off the bat. Like, James and John have been, like, my main contacts there, and they have just been so supportive, like, through all, literal, the ups and the downs for me. So they explained everything from the beginning, and, like, the minimum hours for me to get my private, which is your first rating, is 40 hours. And then the next would be your commercial, and then your CFI after that to like progress through. And I think the 40-hour minimum, I knew, I was like, there's no way you're gonna like.
So 40 hours for a private license.
For a private license,
What can you do with a private license?
With a private license, you can be a renter of the helicopter. You can fly with another person, or if you per se like rent the bigger helicopter like the R-44, you can take other people up as a renter. For that, you can't fly for compensation, but it's more of like your own personal like hobbies, I guess, or just like if you want to own your own helicopter, you can just fly yourself around in friends and family. Yeah. There might be other things that I don't know if you want to touch on that, but I'm just like, I think that's about it.
Yeah, more for like a fun thing.
Yeah, as my dad says, this is a very expensive hobby for you to have, Hannah. And I'm just like, well.
Yeah, because when you started training, you still worked as a nurse, right?
Yeah, so I would say I definitely chose the school I went to because I knew I already had my college degree. Like, I didn't know if I really wanted to invest in going back to school to go to flight school. I mean, I think that's super great for people that have taken that opportunity. But I had to do it to where I could still work, and I work night shift. So being 36 hours a week, 3 shifts a week, I'm working at night, and then on my off days, bouncing back to being a day shifter and then planning flight training around that. So training did take me a bit longer. And I used to like beat myself up over that and being like, oh, you really need to like just hunker down and like really get it done. But I think everything happened in my life for a reason. All of the different chapters that I was like going through for the 2 years that I was studying, because I was still living my life. Like, I mean, I'm only responsible for myself, but I was still going on vacations. I was still planning trips. Like, family emergencies happened. I got sick. Like,
and this was in the middle of COVID.
And this was in the middle of COVID. Like, so not a lot of traveling.
Also bouncing a distance relationship on the East Coast, right?
at that time, and then I I just am so amazed at like people who have like they're just juggling so many hats, and I have to sit back and I'm like, oh well, I'm not juggling the hats of being responsible for anybody else, but like the fact of like being present in my life and the relationships that I have and had. I really had to like take a step back and be like, okay, like you really want to fly helicopters, like you really need to buckle down. So I remember talking to you about it because you helped me study for my ground, because I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to explain this to someone. 2 months before I took my private, I put my schedule, I worked all weekends, I studied Monday through Friday. I took those whole 2 months to just like, I was like, if you're gonna do this, girl, you got to buckle down, because you really have to. It's not a full-time job, but like for someone who doesn't really have it, when I was learning engines, when I was learning weather, like I was like, I don't have like a common knowledge like basis for this. It was definitely very difficult. Obviously other people pick it up way different. I just was that learner that I knew I had to like really just be like, okay, everybody, don't talk to me for the next little bit. Like, yeah. I'm going to work and I'm studying for flight school and I'm doing like Pilates and going on daily walks for my mental health.
It's so funny also when looking back at it, because while you were preparing for your exams and you're flying and all that for your private license, you had moved away from Riverside.
Oh, yeah.
So you were commuting for like hours just to get to flight school.
Just to get to flight school, because I was bound and determined to finish with John, who's my flight instructor. And I met obviously you, and I had Briley, and I had Oleg and Tyler. Like literally everybody through Rogue was like so supportive, because everyone had been there. And everyone's like, hey, like you can do it. Like we're here. Like everybody was available. So I was like, people like asking me like, oh, you drive an hour and 40 minutes or 2 hours, whatever day LA traffic was, from Ventura County down to Santa Ana. And I was like, yeah, I'm not changing flight schools. Like I'm staying with them, and like I'm going to finish like my private. And so I would have to like sleep in my car or book a hotel for a couple days. And looking back, people telling me like, hey, you can make this so much easier for yourself. Like you could just like go to flight school that's right next to you. And nothing against any other flight school near me. It's just like I knew them and they valued me and they supported me, and I had my trust there. And I was just like, no, if I'm gonna learn right, like, and like just be successful in this, I just had to do it there. And so 2 months of that, took it, I don't know, took my private January 29th, I think. Raining that day, the weather was just kind of rotten, and I was like, of course this is going to happen. And John was like, you're gonna be fine, you know what you're doing, like you've prepared. And I think it ended up being perfect. And my DPE that I did my check ride with, he's so funny, and I would love to do my next check ride with him. It was
Matt?
Yeah, it was Matt. And it was the most like, because I've had exams in nursing school, and then I not obviously, but I work in healthcare. So like when you're interviewing or you're working like in high stress environments or whatnot, like egos and how people treat other people or speak to other people, because the check ride is very stressful. Like, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just like, I was prepared for like maybe some of the attitudes that I have dealt with in healthcare, or people talking to me, because I'm not gonna say like I'm like 1,000% knowledgeable. I was ready for my private check ride, and I was like, oh, okay, like he knows that you're only a private, like going for your private. So like this isn't like some commercial or CFI check ride where you're the one that's like teaching someone how to fly, as they should be way more strict and everything. Like, and I was just so worried about having someone, judge you or talk down to you or make you feel stupid in that environment. And Matt came in, and like it was such a good experience. Like he sat down, he was like, Hannah, we're just gonna like talk about helicopters. Like set all his stuff up. I had all my things, and like it was such a good experience of just chatting with him for the hour and a half that we were there. We checked the weather, and he's like, yeah, you think we can go fly? And I was like, yeah, I think we can go fly. And the rain had like cleared up. Then we got in the helicopter and we went in, and I ended up flying from John Wayne to, I had to change course to Corona. The winds were different, so I believe it was runway 7. It's a while ago that I was there. I did all my spots like in the first try and like came back and we landed, and he was like, well, I just wanted you to know, Hannah, like you passed. And like I literally almost started crying, and then I looked at him and I was just like, thank you for making this such a nice experience. Yeah. And he kind of smirked, and I think he said something like, people don't really tell me that, Hannah, or something of the sort. But I was just so impressed with like, not that I was thinking the worst, but
yeah. But it makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
Because you have to feel comfortable doing your check. Like you have all the eyes on you.
Yeah.
So of course there's gonna be nerves.
Yeah.
But talking about private, I never did my private in the US. I never done my private at all, actually, because I went straight from my commercial. But I've heard...
Typical.
No, but I've heard that the private license is actually one of the hardest because, I mean, that's going to set the standard.
Of course.
For what you're going to learn. Of course, it depends on, like, the DPE as well. It depends on your flight school. I know there are sloppy places that probably... send students for check rides before they're ready, but from a lot of people, that's what I heard.
No, absolutely. Like what you're saying, like not that you specifically told me that, but like there were other people that I had talked to, because I wasn't really super involved in the aviation world, still studying and whatnot, just because I was commuting, and then like I didn't hang around with other aviation geeks or anything. Like I was still very new, like didn't really know anybody. But there were a few people that had told me like some horror stories, or like people were like yelling at them or making them feel stupid. And I was just like, this is just not, I do not want that to happen to me, because for me, when I'm at work and I'm taking care of people, like I want the environment, even though people are ill and like vulnerable or in pain, I want it to be a calming and like a safe environment. And I'm a huge advocate for that. So when John and James told me that Matt was going to be my DPE, because he does a lot of the rogue check rides.
He does like most of the check rides in Southern California.
And they were like, Hannah, don't worry about it. Like, he will know if you know like what you're doing, and he's going to ask you, and it's just going to be a conversation. You're going to go in, and they told me like, you just have to prepare.
So talking about like qualified, what do you need to do to be qualified to even start flight school? Because I think that's a question that a lot of people have.
Oh, well, I think like you just need to kind of look up like what flight school, like for you, obviously in Sweden is very different.
Yeah,
for their
we should probably
requirements.
clear that out, that this is in America.
This is this is in the U.S. You can start as young as like 16 to go to school, and then there's 40 hours that
you can actually start any age.
Any age. Yeah, because you've had a really young student before.
Yeah, I had a 12-year-old student when she started.
Yeah. And she's like 16, 17 now?
I think she's 16 now.
16.
Still flying.
Yeah, because you can solo at 16.
Yep.
Yeah. And then you can, I think it's 17, you can hold the private license. And then you need to be 18, I believe, to be a commercial pilot. Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, you're flying a multi-million-dollar machines or a couple $100,000 machine. Yeah.
It's so funny too, looking back at your training, because the reason we met was you weren't my student.
I was never your student. I wanted to be.
But we met in the office, I think, for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard that you were commuting, and you had been in like traffic jam, and you had been driving for like 3 hours to come to Rogue, and you were planning on coming in the next day and like the day after that. And I was living like 5 minutes away from you. So you ended up sleeping in my closet.
The Harry Potter closet.
Yeah,
so your commute to flight school was 5 minutes, and you were like, "Oh, Hannah, do you want to stay at my house?" And I was like, "Oh my God, can I stay at your house?" And then I met your husband Andy, and you were like, "Oh, I made like space for you," because I could have slept in the living room, but because I'm a night shifter and I hate waking up in the morning, you made me a Harry Potter closet. So I had my air mattress, and I went and slept in your closet, and that's the start of our friendship.
Yeah.
Sorry, not sorry.
So we talked about private license, and you need a minimum of 40 hours. Do you think it's reasonable to?
I would have
Go.
not been at 40 hours. I think I got some crazy amount of hours that I probably like.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I think I was well over 100 hours at that time to study for it or to test. I think that also the other thing was like I couldn't do it without taking that written exam. And like the guys were like, "Oh, you have to like your practice test like you need to be well over 89-90% of your percentage before we endorse you to like take this."
So 40 hours and then a practical, or sorry, a written test.
Yeah.
Written test and then a practical test, which is pretty much like a driver's ed, but just way longer.
Way longer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And way more expensive.
Yeah, yeah, that too.
It's just, yeah.
Because like if we're talking about pricing, I mean, of course you have the different licenses, right? You have your private license, then you can step up and do your commercial license.
Correct, yeah.
Which you're working on now.
Which I am working on now. Still working through like that imposter syndrome. I'm like, oh, but it's also just like encouraging to look back and be like where I started, and now I think I have like 50 hours until I have like completed like the hour requirement for the commercial, and I'm going after this vacation, and once I get back to adulting, I'll definitely do like the similar thing of like prepping for that written exam and really just like because I know it works for me. Like for other people, they may be able to do it differently or just not have such a strict schedule for themselves, and that's like super great. And so I found a way that it works for me, and I'm working on my commercial right now with Rogue, and I'll definitely love to do like my check ride again with Matt and like have them like help me through this next process. Like for CFI, I haven't really even thought about it a lot, but it's again like I'm like, could I teach someone how to fly a helicopter?
The CFI is a flight instructor.
The commercial flight instructor, and you're walking in with, gosh, just well over like 250 hours or something like that.
200 hours.
200 hours.
If you're
yeah.
If you can manage.
If you can manage.
What's the hour requirements for commercial?
200.
200.
Yeah. And then I believe the written exam is like 100 questions. That's what I've been studying for.
Yeah.
And I don't know the whole ins and outs. I didn't really look that up or anything for the CFI requirements or whatnot. But again, that would be the next level.
If you want to work as a flight instructor.
If you want to work as a flight instructor.
Which is usually the way people do it in the US. There are several ways to go, of course. You can do military if you want to go that route. Or you can do like private, commercial, and then flight instructor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you need to have 200 hours to instruct. But yeah, and a lot of people think it's crazy that like
it's absurd. You're coming out with the lowest amount of hours and you're going to teach people how to fly.
Yeah.
Which granted, like you and a lot of the other CFIs said, like becoming a CFI, like you just learn you become an expert. It's your trade. It's the practice of your trade. Just like me being a nurse for 8 years now. Like I train new people coming out to take care of people, and ask me maybe 2 years into being a baby nurse, I'd be like, no, I can't train someone to do this job. Like I'm surviving at this point. Now I'm like, yeah, come on over. Like this is how you're gonna do it. And the guys have told me too. They're just like, hey, like you teach people how to be a nurse. Like you could learn how to teach people how to fly helicopters. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. And how you guys have all said, you just become an expert and you know so much, and your knowledge is so fresh, and you're right there, like doing everything.
Yeah, exactly. But then you also learn so much along the route.
Yeah.
I did have a student who he finished his private with me right before I left Rogue, and he made me a T-shirt that said, "You can't scare me. I'm a flight instructor. My students try to kill me every day."
Yeah.
Which is it's kind of like a standing joke for a lot of flight instructors.
It's dark humor.
Yeah, it's dark humor.
I love dark humor.
Yeah, but yeah, you have to be on your toes
all
ready.
the time.
But that's and also, but I think that's the cool part with being a flight instructor, because you learn to see the different learning styles.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer in, like, if the student doesn't get it, it's not the student's fault. I mean, you have to be able to explain it or reach that student so that he or she can understand.
Yeah.
And sometimes I know we would have like weekly meetings when I was working as a flight instructor, just talking about the progress of the students and what they were struggling with and all that, and if there was anything we could do. Like, oh, this person kind of hit a plateau. Um, what can I do?
Yeah.
And we would kind of move around, like, yeah, maybe he or she should fly with this instructor for a
Yeah.
little bit instead, just to see if that person can figure out how to reach the student.
Another set of eyes on them. And I appreciate that so much because, like, I had to go through that as well. Like, as a student, like, I needed to fly with other people too, because your instructors notice your habits, your bad habits, or like they can anticipate what you're going to do after flying with you for a while. And I think also props to like your team and who you're working with that are doing that, because I've definitely heard like some flight schools, like it's just like it's kind of a bit of a free for all, and you just got to get your hours and you just pay for your flight time, and like good on like who you're with and like who you were like, yeah, I'm gonna take care of my students and I need help, and like let's debrief about, because we want them to succeed. We want them to be safe pilots. Like we want everybody in the air to be safe, and let's see how we can make that work. It's not like fend for yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's
And we definitely had students coming in that had just been used. Like,
Yeah.
they came in with a lot of hours, and they didn't know like anything. Like because their instructors never, like, they were just there to get their hours, to get out of there. They were like using the students,
which is just
for their
like
own benefits.
it makes you cringe, and you're just like, oh man, this is already hard enough.
Yeah.
And
Because
expensive
it's
enough.
so much money. Because
So much money.
let's talk about the cost. Let's say that you're going for a private license.
Yeah.
Which you can work on. Like, you can only fly for your own benefit. How much do you pay an hour for a 22?
For a 22. Approximately, I think probably like $355, $360 an hour. I think the prices have gone up at this point.
Dollars.
And US dollars. Sorry.
Yeah.
$360 US dollars have gone up. So you add that up, and I'm sure other flight schools are way more expensive. Like, and
Or cheaper. Yeah.
Like some, like I would say, looking at that and then like the accumulating like the hours, I definitely invested for my private alone. Oh, it's like cringe like thinking about it.
Yeah, you don't have to think about it. We don't have to talk
Yeah.
about it. We just 40 hours
Yeah.
and like $350 an hour, and that is not included the ground school.
The ground school.
It's not included the check ride.
No.
So of course, like, the ground you will need, it all depends on like your knowledge since before. But I also think that when you go for a private license, you're so new into this industry. I know there's a lot of places out there, they're like, oh, we can do all the ground school, like, distance learning, which might work for some people.
Sure.
But I also think that it's really beneficial just to have someone explain it to you,
Yeah.
and someone that you can ask the questions that you have.
Yeah. I feel like going to the classroom and like having ground school with John and like going through and like having my notebook and like writing things down and like talking and drawing things out. Now, granted, like when COVID was going on and like whatnot, and or it was just like, oh, I just need to touch up on a few things, or hey, can we go over this? Like, we Zoomed, which was fine, so I didn't have to commute down. Not everybody has that problem like I do, but they were also very considerate of that, so we did Zoom, and so that helped. And using like the drawing aspect on the Zoom and like sharing the screen and like going over stuff, like that really helped, because I wouldn't have been able to. I'm just not that type of learner.
Yeah.
like I need someone to like physically be there or on the screen to like chat with me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think it's beneficial, but we're all different. So we have private license that you can fly privately on. We talked about the commercial license, which you can work commercially on.
and work for money.
Work for money.
So it's not that expensive of a hobby anymore.
Yeah. The thing is, though, when you get out like from flight school and you have a private and commercial license, it's not that many things that you can do.
No.
Unfortunately. Because a lot of companies, they just see you as basically a student because you've only been a student. You never worked in the industry.
Yeah.
And then so most people, they do their flight instructor license, which is you can teach someone how to fly. CFI it's called, or they just call it FI in Europe.
Okay.
So yeah, same thing. Different are requirements if you're in the US or if you're in Europe. In Europe, it's 250 hours requirement, and the US is 200. Yeah. But then we have additional ratings.
Yeah, there are more ratings. You can go over all those ratings.
You can take your instrument license, which is you basically fly on your instrument. So let's say that you don't have any visual reference outside, where you need to like rely on the instruments in your helicopter. So that's an instrument license. And then you can also be a teacher, teaching people to get their instrument license. And that's called a CFII in the US. I think there's another name for it in Europe. Yeah, so there are like, so a lot of schools actually require you to do all the licenses for the full program.
Okay.
Yeah, like Mauna Loa, for example, if you're going for like the professional pilot program. And I think the cost is approximate. I mean, it all depends on like, the time you put into it and how long it takes and all that. But I would say approximate like $100,000. Yeah. Which is a lot of money.
Which is another investment, which is like, then you come out of it and you're like, okay, so when is this gonna start paying off?
Yeah, and you might as well, do all those licenses, and you can kind of like do it, custom it a little bit after your own, whatever you want to do. Like I know a lot of people do private and then instrument, and then a lot of people also do private, commercial, and CFI, kind of like commercial and CFI together. Because then you can use the hours you need to build up to teach.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you teach it to someone, if you're able to teach it, you're probably able to fly it commercially as well.
Yeah. That's sound knowledge for that part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So there's different ways to do it all, but yeah, it's a big investment. And then when you're done with it all, there's still so much more that goes into it.
Yeah, and this is where the connections and networking and talking to people like really come in, because it can be so overwhelming and so daunting. And like I was just so focused on like doing my private, because I was like, okay, the next one I'll worry about that
you were
later.
Still connecting.
And I was still connecting. And now being beautiful friends with you, I've learned so much, and like you have introduced me to wonderful people and just people that
I don't think I really need to introduce any people to you, because you're very good at doing that yourself.
We're also very social, and we can probably just talk to anyone. We're very comfortable in ourselves and whatnot. And I think like one of the wonderful things about you is like when you're meeting people, like your smile and like your energy that you like carry in, like you're just so genuine, and you're here, and you have that energy, and it just floods off of you, and it's not necessarily through osmosis, but like you're just like, I really want to be like happy like that, like I want to enjoy now I want to enjoy life like her. And I think finding similar people like that, or just having those high energy people and supportive people, you are very supportive, and it's an open door policy, and it's a safe space to have serious chats, vulnerable chats, like when you're doubting yourself, or like you just need a confidence boost, or be like, hey, you know what, maybe you're not super great at that, or like you don't know a lot about that, but that doesn't mean that can't change. And having that relationship, especially between us, like I think throughout the past like 2 years that I've been going through this and the changes and like pushing myself, like it's nice to have someone else besides like your regular people that you see every day telling you like, oh no, like you absolutely like can do it, and you're like, oh no, and then you talk to your other
Sometimes
friends.
you just need a little confidence boost.
Yeah.
But I also, talking about connections and all that, the number one thing I learned when I went to flight school was that treat everyone nicely. Like, be nice to everyone, because you never know who's going to be like your next coworker, your next boss, even.
Yeah.
Like, it could be anyone. And this industry is so tiny.
It is very small, but it's also just like, sorry, we have to tell you to be nice to people. Like, why can't people just be nice?
Yeah, no,
just
no,
be
of
nice.
course.
But
Yeah.
in this industry, absolutely, like, not that I'm fully into it yet, but you'll meet people and you just never know who you're gonna run in. And I think that's also similar in healthcare. Like, I mean, healthcare is massive, but in the nursing world and stuff, and like working with I'm a contractor, so working with different people, like, I hold myself to how like I want people to view me. Like, I am an approachable person. I'm not gonna treat anybody really any different, and I hold myself to that standard. Like, I just want to be that person that you can come up to. I'm gonna be nice, and like we can talk about things. I may not know everything, or I may not be super knowledgeable, and like I think with that coming from that way and caring for people who are sick, and then coming into aviation, I'm just like, oh well, like I'm still gonna be me. And I may not know a lot of everything, but I'm willing to learn.
Yeah. I think, no, it's just be a good person.
Just be a good
it's not
person.
That hard.
Let's make a shirt. Just be a good person. There's
Yeah.
probably one already out there.
Yeah.
We'll get some hats too.
Talking about like all that money too, that goes into it.
Yeah.
How have you been able to pay for your flight training?
I've been paying as I go. I know that there are loans out there like Sally Mae and stuff like that. I know, like, for instance, you introduced me on Instagram, and like when we were at Heli Expo, to Whirly Girls, they have scholarships. I think that's absolutely fabulous. Like, cause I didn't know anything about
Whirly
that.
Girls is a big organization.
Yeah.
So is Women in Aviation. Unfortunately, I haven't found like really any scholarships for men.
We were talking about that, which is like a bit of a bummer because it is a bit of a boys club, but
Yeah.
the girls are coming through as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and they offer scholarships that you can apply for, and it's also just like a good community to like get in with. And I think just through you, like, I've also met so many wonderful women in this aviation and world. And I'm just like, wow, I want to be like them when I grow up. I say that to Michelle all the time. I'm just like, I want to be like you when I grow up. Like, and so, yeah, so I have not taken out any loans. I'm just paying as I go. And I think that's best for me personally, but I know that
It's an expensive hobby.
It's an expensive hobby, and my dad will never let me live that down. But that's okay.
But your dad will also, pave a helicopter pad for you in the future.
I'll just be like, hey, sure. I can fly helicopters for money now. So back home in Oregon, I'd be like, you won't have to drive all over Oregon anymore for work. I could just fly you. Just build me a little helipad. We live in Southern Oregon, and I'm just like, there's plenty of room. Let's just pick somewhere. And he just like, yeah. I'll believe it when I've got that commercial pilot in my pocket. And I'm like, I'm glad it's your license, not mine.
No, but there are some scholarships out there, and that's also how we met a little bit, because I was introducing you to a scholarship as well.
Yeah. And that helped me loads.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, but there are and that's also, I mean, like with connections, if you just be a good person, introduce yourself, be sociable. And I know, I mean, helicopter pilots are a special breed. Not everyone is like super social, and that's okay too.
It's okay to be an introvert coming from an extrovert.
Yeah, but just be nice.
Yeah. Share the wealth, share the knowledge. If you have the like emotional capacity for that.
Yeah. So, what's your next goal?
Well, since I like looked back in, I don't know, 2020, I was like, all right, this is my new challenge for the year. I'm gonna try and become a helicopter pilot because I moved myself to the Middle East all by myself, and then I started travel nursing by myself. And I think the next one is definitely, I would love to focus, I think, the rest of the year on my commercial pilot after that. And then really sitting down and being like, okay, do you want to pursue CFI? Because I'm probably going to look at it and be like, this looks a little difficult. I don't know if I can do it.
I'm sure you can.
And then being like, all right, I'm going to do it. So I am a contract working nurse currently. So I'll be able to be more flexible, because the wonderful thing about nursing is like I'll always have my nursing degree and I'll always have my license. So I can work anywhere in the US for the most part. I don't think I would go overseas again to work as a nurse. I did it for a year and I had a wonderful time, but like working in the US is definitely West Coast, because the rates are much better on the West Coast.
Which they should be, because it's so expensive.
Because it is so expensive. And then just pursuing that. I can't afford like any other expensive hobbies besides buying airplane tickets to like go and travel. The vacation will never stop.
Which your flight instructor know by now.
Oh yeah.
Because he's so like.
Sorry, John.
I just remember he was like on our meetings. He's like, no, Hannah won't be here then. They're like, is she going away again?
And he's like, yeah. When I was coming to visit you, another vacation. And then he was like, all right, well, you're going to see somebody really cool. I could bring him with me. I would, but just didn't work out that way. So that's fine. But I definitely see you, and like I definitely aspire to like you just lead by such an example. And like I think the way that you hold yourself, and you also just being real about it and being like, hey, this isn't always easy. You got to put the work in, and like you really got to, like, if this is what you want. And I appreciate that as like your friend, and also just a fellow like pilot that's learning. And that you just keep pushing yourself, and you create opportunities for yourself, and you are always kind, and you reach out, and you talk to people. And I really value that, because it's not always easy sometimes when you're just thinking about yourself and you're just like, okay, what am I doing? Where am I going?
Yeah, and also I don't know how many times I've thought to myself and heard other people saying, if I knew how much work it was going into it, I would probably not have done it. Because, you know, if you look at it from the outside, it's like, okay, it's maybe 2 years, if you do it full time.
If you do it full time.
Yeah, if you do it full time, just like, hey, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to spend this $100,000 and I'm going to become a commercial helicopter pilot. You think that, oh, like 2 years, it's and then I have a job. It's nothing. And then you get your first job, and as a CFI, you barely survive. Yeah, it's
another mind-boggling
thing.
thing.
So then like you're in this area where you have to work for not a lot of money, but you are learning so much at the same time, but like you're just barely surviving, trying to get your hours.
Yeah, trying to get your hours and reach that minimum where like a bigger company will hire you. And I'm sure like insurance and all that, like the hours is the currency, like in aviation. Like, and it's just, I always think about that too. Like, I'm just like, your hours are currency.
Yes, it is. And also looking into it, like talking about being nice to people, there are also a lot of competition out there. You know, trying to get those hours. Some people are being not very nice.
Yeah.
Getting there, you know. I don't believe in that, because I think in the long run, it's I believe in karma.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a struggle just getting those hours. You have to work hard. You have to work for a long time. Then in the US, I know that you have to reach usually 1,000 hours before any company would let you fly a turbine helicopter. So that's another step, like going from a piston engine to a turbine engine. And yeah, it's a lot of time and money invested to it. And then getting that first turbine job, and then maybe, you know, working there for a while, and then moving to something bigger.
Yeah.
So it's like you know, it's 2 years, but it's actually not 2 years. It's
Yeah.
a
The
lot of
minimum
years.
is the 2 years, and then your
Yeah.
real journey starts.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a small portion of it.
Mhm.
And just like the compensation for pilots is like, it's just like a bit defeating in a sense, because you work so hard and you spent all this money. And from what I've seen and like what I've read and like whatnot, and then you're not going to be compensated for the hours that you're going to put in working, but you're a smart person that is operating and qualified to operate these rotorcraft like throughout, and it just, I was a baby nurse. I went 4 years in nursing school. I got my degree. I passed my license exam, and I was paid livable wages to take care of a human life
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
hospital
Yeah.
at 22 years old.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, how can someone who's operating like this machinery in the air not get paid? Is like, I mean,
Yeah. And it's like, if you look at it from the outside, people are like, "Oh, you're living life.
oh yeah,
flying
you're so cool.
helicopters.
You fly helicopters.
You're a pilot, so you probably make a lot of money." I remember when I had my first pilot job, and I was paid, I think it was like $30 an hour, and you get paid when you fly. So like all the other work that goes into it, you're not necessarily paid for it. Like if you do, you have to check the helicopter before you go. Like
Oh, yeah.
pre-flight, you need to do a post-flight. You need to make sure you got fuel, all that work. And then I was flying a tour, and I was flying. I mean, like it was a 44. I don't know the cost of a 44, but probably like a $600,000 maybe.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
a brand new one.
Yeah, something like that. So flying a $600,000 machine, and it was a 30-minute tour. And whenever we were done from the tour, I heard them talking, and they were like, "Oh, are we gonna tip her?" And then one of the passengers said, "No, she makes so much money anyway. She doesn't need it." And looking at that, it's like, okay, so for my 30-minute tour in a $600,000 machine, I got paid $15.
Yeah.
And that's before taxes.
That's before taxes.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, like living in LA or living, that doesn't even, like, it's not even survivable.
No.
So, yeah, it's a lot of years. It's a lot of money put into it. And then we haven't even started talking about EASA. I mean, like, that's even worse.
Yeah.
Because in the US, you don't need a license. And I mean, like, you need your license, but whenever you have your license, you can basically fly anything. Like, of course, no company will let you fly a new machine without training you.
Yeah.
But in Europe, you actually have to have a type rating for every helicopter you fly, which it's kind of like comparable, I think, to driving a car. Like, if you start driving a Volvo, you can only drive a Volvo. Then you need to do another driver's ed test to drive a Mercedes.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But just way more expensive.
Way more expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, now when you talked about the $350 per hour, that's for the tiniest little helicopter.
That's the tiniest. And that was
Yeah.
like a really good price, like
Yeah.
at the time, because
Yeah.
prices have gone up
Yeah.
since like
Yeah.
then, and like jet fuel, very expensive.
Yeah, like I would say, like, I mean, operating cost for a 66, which is like a small turbine helicopter, I think it's about $1,000 an hour. I think I'm not sure, but something like that.
Yeah.
Just operating cost.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It just doesn't like, it's like, make it make sense. Like,
Yeah.
give these people, like, they've studied, they've paid, like, you've done all this hard work and you've invested so much, just for someone coming from the outside looking in. And I'm like, you are not compensated enough. Like, because for me, when I go to work, I can negotiate my pay. Like, I can be like, I'll take it or leave it, you know, and in a world for you guys, because you guys are trying to find like places that you can work, get the hours that you need for your currency to go move up, because you can keep adding to your time.
It's a lifelong process.
It's a lifelong process. And in saying that, like, it is a beautiful life when it's financially stable and like you're comfortable and you know, like, okay, I can afford my monthly expenses. I can afford to feed myself. Like, I can take care of myself on this wonderful career that I've challenged myself to do. And I don't know how or where that would be started to like make that change, or like just talk to people about it, because I think everybody's just the same.
I think it's
they
just
know,
like,
and they're just sad.
Yeah, it's just so expensive. Even running a company, like the flight schools, they don't make a lot of money out of having a flight school because it's already so expensive to have all this machinery for them. So yeah, but I know, especially in the U.S., that a lot of helicopter pilots, they're obviously not paid the same amount as airplane pilots, because usually if you fly fixed wing, which is airplanes, you don't necessarily even have to work as a flight instructor. You can be lucky enough to just land a job flying private jets, or even
Being
like,
nice to people, knowing people, and they're like,
Yeah.
hey, you just got your
Yeah.
license. You want to come fly for
and
me?
then you're being compensated for it, because they you just can't compete the salaries for a helicopter pilot with an airplane pilot. So a lot of helicopter pilots actually,
Yeah, crossover.
yeah, they cross over. If you have your helicopter license, it's not that big of a step to go fly fixed wing. The other way around is a little more tricky.
It's a little more tricky. Yeah.
And it wouldn't make sense financially. I think the people who do are the ones that are already made the money, they're financially stable, and they're like, oh, I just want to fly for fun now. So I'm going to fly helicopters because they are, I'm a little biased, but they're more fun.
Yeah, I agree. And lucky for those people that can go and do those things. But it's also like the special people that just want to fly helicopters, and they want to fly really cool things, and they want to go out and help people, or they want to do tours, or they want to teach people how to fly. Or
Do you think that you will start flying EMS in the future?
I think that would be super great, and like on like that end, like top, or I guess like 5-year goal for my helicopter life.
And just to clarify, EMS is
Emergency medicine services.
Yes, like an ambulance helicopter.
Yeah, and I think that would be great. Definitely giving back, because that's kind of what started this whole thing. Where I was like, yeah, what about becoming the helicopter
And
pilot?
I'm sure like you would have a huge benefit being a nurse and working so long in healthcare. And
yeah. And just like, I think the importance and the value of like human life, and being like, okay, this person needs to get to point A to point B, like you need to get them there. I would love to experience more things, different terrains, like different environments and flying and whatnot. And I think the opportunities are out there. It's obviously making the time, having the money to do that, and then just preparing yourself, or preparing myself to get there to do that. So EMS would definitely be great. And there are so many opportunities out there too. And I think also just meeting people and being like, hey, have you ever thought of this? And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that existed, but sure, that sounds great.
that's so fun also with this industry, because some, like, before you get into it, you have a goal or a mindset of like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And then you meet so many interesting people, and you see all the different types of jobs that you can do. And you're like, oh, that would be cool to do. And that would be nice.
Yeah.
And then you're like, maybe I should do this for a little bit.
The options and the opportunities are quite endless. So
yeah, I would say especially in the US. Yeah, because it's just more accessible. I think with helicopters, it's
it's massive.
Yeah,
it's a massive place. Like looking at it from like being in Europe and stuff, and I'm like, dang, the US is just it's a very big place. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on this podcast, Hanna. I think we should wrap this up now. Yeah.
We could talk for a really long time. Hopefully we got something good in here to talk about.
Yeah.
People just look.
And hopefully, maybe we can do another podcast in a year or two. Maybe we never know where.
We never know where. I mean, we're just sitting in Greece.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe Heli Expo next year.
Yeah. My first Heli Expo.
Yeah.
Was with you. Mm-hmm. And it was great. Met great people. So
it was also so nice because we went there together, and then I stopped to talk with someone, and you just being social, and you said hi, and then you were grabbing my husband hey, let's take a walk. And
he's so supportive. And I was like, I'm new here.
Socialize.
You don't really, also, you're not part of the aviation world. You're just by proxy. So let's walk around and go see stuff. And it was good because John was there too. So if we had questions, he just answered it for us. But then we did get to meet some really cool people. And
yeah, we did. It was a lot of fun. It's good to connect with people, and just that's the thing. Once you're in it, you start being a little nerdy.
Yeah. And then we'll go to Dallas next year for
Yeah.
Heli Expo and
Yeah.
just meet some more people. And then I'll just find another place to go and visit you.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Thank you for having
Yeah.
me on
Thank you, Hannah.
and introducing me to this fun
Yeah.
little bit of your
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. And now people know, you know, the steps to take to become a pilot.
Yeah, maybe do it a little bit better than me. Thank you.